Blake Bortles was out of the NFL by 27 years old and officially retired at the age of 30. The former UCF quarterback was taken 3rd overall in the 2014 draft, and even though Bortles himself admitted he was raw and needed coaching prior to the draft, the Jaguars still took him. The pick received mixed reviews, and almost every draft grade for this pick was somewhere from a C to a D. It was evident that Jacksonville needed a quarterback in that draft, and reaching for that need eventually turned into a mistake. I guess it could have been worse. They could have taken Johnny Manziel instead. Anyway, his rookie year was ugly. 11 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, a completion rate under 60%, and a 3-10 record to show for. He was sacked a league-high 55 times. It was just an absolute mess. His 21.9 QBR was 3rd worst for a rookie quarterback since 2006, and his completion percentage was 28th in the NFL in 2014. Bortles' 2015 season was better, but still left much to be desired. He did throw over 35 touchdowns, over 4,400 passing yards, and led the league in game-winning drives. But on the downside, his already poor completion percentage dropped. He led the league in interceptions with 18, and once again was the most sacked quarterback in football. The team did improve, quote-unquote, to 5-11, so at least they moved in the right direction, technically. In Bortles' 3rd year in 2016, he took a bit of a step back, and so did the Jags as they dropped to 3-13. Now, after 3 years of, let's be honest, not so good football, to put it nicely, you'd think the Jags, who held the 4th overall pick, would move on from Bortles. Well, that's not how the Jaguars looked at it. At the 4th overall pick, the Jags had Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes on the board, but they decided to take LSU running back Leonard Fournette, a decision they'd eventually regret. But then 2017 happened. The Jags added Tom Coughlin to their front office, and he talked about Blake Bortles cutting down his turnovers, but also suggested that the rest of the team needed to step up as well. In 2017's offseason, they made some big splashes, including stud defensive end Calais Campbell, safety Barry Church, and cornerback AJ Bouye, who was great for them. The expectations for Jacksonville were still super low. Most projections had them between 4 and 6 wins in 2017, and Bortles was a dead man walking at that point. Doug Marrone, who was the interim head coach the year prior for a couple games, was given the chance to be the full-time head coach as the Jags gave him an extension. The offense had some potential, but only if Bortles was able to put it together, but defensively is where this team shined. Between Telvin Smith, Miles Jack, AJ Bouye, Jalen Ramsey, Calais Campbell, Tashawn Gibson, Malik Jackson, Yannick Ngakoue, Dante Fowler, and the veteran Paul Posluszny, the Jags had a tremendous defense, and they showed it all season, ranking number 2 in sacks, number 2 in interceptions, number 2 in takeaways, the number 1 pass defense, and number 2 in total yards allowed. It all just came together at the right time, and their defense was truly elite. Now that we know their defense was good, how about that offense, including our friend Blake Bortles, who was on thin ice at that point? The offense took a massive hit in week 1 as their wide receiver one Allen Robinson tore his ACL, which was the last thing Blake Bortles needed. He did get help from his rookie running back Leonard Fournette, who tallied over 1,000 rushing yards and 10 total touchdowns. But no Jags receiver had over 750 receiving yards. Keelan Cole led the team with 748, and Marquise Lee was not too far behind. It still doesn't make sense how this offense stayed afloat, but they somehow made it work. But without their elite defense being 2nd in defensive scoring, I don't think this team would have went that far. After a shocking blowout in week 3 versus the Ravens in London, the Jaguars sort of put the league on notice. It was either a lucky game or something was actually brewing for this Jacksonville team. And after a huge week 10 overtime win versus the Chargers, the Jags improved to 6-3, and the playoffs all of a sudden seemed like a real possibility. They'd improved to 10-4 before dropping their final 2 games to finish 10-6 and clinched their first playoff spot in 10 years. They won the AFC South, meaning they hosted their first playoff game since 1999. It wasn't pretty, but the Jags did get it done as a Jalen Ramsey interception secured a 10-3 win over Tyrod Taylor and the Bills. The divisional round, however, was not going to be easy. They had to travel to Pittsburgh on the road and face the Killer Bees and their high-powered offense. But as the saying goes, defense wins championships. Despite the Steelers being favored by almost 10 points, the Jaguars went to Heinz Field and shocked everybody. A defensive touchdown gave the Jags a 28-7 advantage, but the Steelers' offense kept knocking on the door. The problem for the Steelers Oilers though was that Blake Bortles was in a groove, putting up a 94 passer rating and 249 total yards. A triumphant comeback fell short, and somehow, someway, Blake Bortles and the Jags were off to Foxborough with a chance to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Talk about unexpected. This is an organization that hadn't exceeded 5 wins in 7 years. The 13-3 Patriots may have expected a comfortable win to keep the dynasty going, but found themselves down 10 points in the fourth quarter to Blake Bortles' Jaguars. A couple of third quarter field goals by Josh Lambo made it a 20-10 lead, and the Patriots had their backs against the wall. And honestly, the Jags were in a perfect position. Arguably the best defense in the league, up 10 in cold weather, against the Patriots team without 2 of their best weapons. In case you forgot, Julian Edelman tore his ACL in preseason that year, so he was out. Rob Gronkowski suffered a concussion in the first half, so he was out. It was all right there for the taking, and for a bit, it seemed like Blake Bortles was about to outduel Tom Brady on his own turf. With 13 minutes to go, a very controversial play involving Miles Jack and Dion Lewis could have changed NFL history. Jack forced an incredible fumble, and although the fumble was reviewed and confirmed, the play was blown dead. And if it was not blown dead, Miles Jack may have been able to take it back for 6, making it 28-10 Jaguars. Instead, the ball was down where the fumble occurred, and the Jags had a 3-and-out and gave the ball right back to Brady. Brady, after being sacked on a 3rd and 18, converted to Danny Amendola, and then the floodgates opened. The Jaguars punted on 3 straight possessions in the fourth quarter, but with 2 minutes and 48 seconds to go, Blake Bortles had a chance to send the Jags to the Super Bowl with 1 touchdown drive. I bet Tom Coughlin wished he had Eli Manning in this situation. After a missed wheel route to Leonard Fournette that would have put them inside the 10, the Jags faced a 4th and 14 on the Patriots 43 with their season on the line. And Bortles, to be honest, made a very good throw, but the future Defensive Player of the Year Stephon Gilmore had one of the best pass breakups you'll ever see. A failed run stop by the Jags defense on 3rd and long, and that was it. We were that close to getting a Nick Foles vs. Blake Bortles Super Bowl. Although the Jags fell short in that magical 2017 season, there was plenty of optimism due to their young core and success under their new head coach Doug Marrone. In the 2018 offseason, the Jags had a decision to make regarding the contract of Blake Bortles. And while in hindsight, it looked like an easy decision to move on, it wasn't exactly easy at that time. A late draft pick, team having success, nearly going to the Super Bowl, it didn't make sense to run it back. And on February 24th, 2018, it was announced that Bortles was extended for 3 years and $54 million. And as we now know, it would not take long for the Jaguars to regret that decision. 2018 started off pretty well. Despite losing Leonard Fournette to a hamstring injury, they had a 3-1 start, and Bortles repping a 93 quarterback rating and 7 touchdowns. And that even included a redemption victory over the New England Patriots, where Bortles had 4 passing touchdowns. But in week 5 was where everything unraveled, and Bortles threw 4 interceptions at Kansas City. And the week after that, it was a 40-7 loss to the Dallas Cowboys, and all of a sudden the leash was getting short for the quarterback on the first year of his new contract. In week 7 versus the Texans, Bortles lost 2 fumbles and was benched for Cody Kessler. And although the Jags still arguably had the best defense in football, they fell to 3-4 on the season, and it would not get much better. Bortles did get his starting job back, and although he put up better numbers the next 2 games, they still lost both games. After back-to-back dreadful performances in weeks 11 and 12, Bortles was once again benched in favor of Cody Kessler. At that point in the season, Bortles was near the bottom of the league among starting quarterbacks in completion rate, passer rating, yards per attempt, and had 8 losses in 11 games. Bortles played in the final game and a half of the 2018 season as he replaced a struggling Cody Kessler, and still didn't look that good. After 1 season into his 3-year deal, the Jags pulled the plug. Bortles was released, and the Jaguars would soon sign Nick Foles as their quarterback 1 to replace him. In fairness, Bortles was never given a good foundation. In his first 3 years, he was given 3 offensive coordinators while being sacked a staggering 106 times in his first 2 years. Releasing Bortles this quickly meant the Jags had to eat $16.5 million in dead cap money, but they were convinced at that time that the Bortles era had to end. 2017 was a great year and it was very close to being historic, but overall there were too many turnovers and inaccuracy from Bortles to be considered a franchise quarterback. After 2018, you really did not see or hear much from Bortles. He signed up to be Jared Goff's backup in LA for 1 year in 2019, but never started a game and attempted just 2 passes. In 2020, he bounced around with the Broncos from the active roster to practice squad to COVID list and never appeared in a game. Bortles was actually one of the 3 quarterbacks in COVID protocol, which led to the Broncos having to start wide receiver Kendall Hinton at quarterback in that 2020 game versus the Saints. In late 2020, Bortles signed back with the Rams, but this time on their practice squad as Jared Goff nursed a shoulder injury. In 2021, Bortles showed up on the Packers active roster to back up Jordan Love in that week that Aaron Rodgers missed a game with COVID, but did not see the field. Later in 2021, Bortles signed with the Saints while Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian were on the COVID list and Jameis Winston was already on IR. He backed up Ian Book for 1 game, but once again did not see the field. At this point, it was 2 years since Bortles threw a pass in the NFL and 3 years since starting a game. In October of 2022, on the podcast Pardon My Take, the 30-year-old Bortles announced he had retired from football. Was he a bust? Yeah, probably. Would Nick Foles versus Blake Bortles have been the most underwhelming Super Bowl matchup in NFL history? Yeah, maybe. But hey, it was a good run for that 1 year, and the Blake Bortles experiment had plenty of highs and a lot more lows. And by the way, for those interested, I did a deep dive about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, on the Jaguars team collapse after 2017. Go ahead and give that a look if you're interested. As for this video, I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe for more NFL content, and I'll talk to you guys next time.